Hello, and welcome back to the Thought Cloud podcast. Our goal at this conversation is to uncover a hidden gem that can inspire others along their academic journey. Our guest today is Mihir Rao. Mihir is an incoming freshman at Princeton University, where he will be studying engineering biology and quantitative and computational biology. We are excited to learn more about this. I know that there's a lot of questions I have. In high school, Mihir was able to work on many research projects around computational chemistry, deep learning and computer vision, and geospatial analysis of wildfires. He founded CS Base, which is a nonprofit that provides accessible CS education to a global community. And this summer, he is currently an intern for PLT Solutions. So, Mihir, thank you so much for coming on. I'm super excited to learn more about your path and yeah, say a few words.
Thanks a lot for having me. I know, especially this summer, I've actually been listening a lot to the Thought Club podcast. It's been really insightful for me, just hearing essentially my peers' stories and passions and how they're going about sort of achieving their goals. So hopefully this conversation can be insightful for someone else that's listening.
100%, 100%. Well, that's really cool to hear that you've been listening, and it's great to have you on the books with us now. So, let's start with Princeton. How did you decide to study at Princeton?
I suppose partially just a product of the admission cycle, and also just looking at the options I had at the end of it. So in May, really the decision of choosing Princeton really came down to, I think, Princeton's undergrad focus. Um, Obviously, given what I want to study, Princeton has really great departments for that. They have various institutes set up for research I might want to do, classes I might want to take. But I think generally the undergrad focus at Princeton is what made it really appealing to me. So all of the resources, funding, and world-class faculty at Princeton are predominantly focused on teaching undergrads, mentoring undergrads, helping them with research, and really having a strong undergrad focus. So I think it's something that's unique to Princeton and something that you may not get at some of Princeton's peer institutions, where a lot of the sort of more experienced and high level faculty might be working more closely with grad students rather than undergrads. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to having that sort of connection with really experienced people at Princeton.
Wow. So it's this graduate or these postdoc type people, faculty type people that are really hands-on with these undergraduates. Is that the specific track that you got accepted into, or is that across the board for everybody in Princeton that wants to further their research, etc.?
No, so I think that's just a thing that's common throughout Princeton, regardless of what department you're in, what you're studying. Generally, Princeton doesn't have any professional graduate school, so they don't have a law school or a med school.
Mhm.
They do obviously have graduate programs in these various departments, but generally these programs tend to be smaller than some of the programs at peer institutions, and so the professors are really able to focus on those graduate students, but they're also coming into Princeton. They know that they're going to have to teach undergraduate courses and work with undergrads, and so the professors that are at Princeton come into Princeton knowing that they're going to have to engage with undergrads, and they really look forward to doing that. So that's a big reason why I decided to go there, just to have that sort of exposure to these people.
Wow, wow, wow. Actually, I've never heard that before. So that's really cool. You're able to find that and, realize that that's going to be such a big benefit. And it is.
Yeah.
I remember at Berkeley, I had to really search for my mentor to help me get into those positions. And for that to be sort of set up and knowing that you have that for you, that's wonderful. What were you deciding between? What different schools?
Yeah. So for me, I guess I can say one big sort of comparison I had to make was between Princeton and UPenn.
Hmm.
And so UPenn for me was sort of uh, a good model school that I was comparing Princeton against amongst other schools. Given that UPenn has a medical school, for example, and their computer science department, and even their professors and grad students involved in computational biology, that department is significantly larger than the department at Princeton. And so, let's say you want to work on something in a very niche computer science or computational biology field. You may have like one or two people at Princeton working on it, but you might have 10 to 15 people working on it at Penn. And so it really came down to a decision of um, do I want to go for a program where I could have more sort of engagement directness with the faculty, or go to a program where there are more options to engage, but that the extent to which you're engaging with them and the depth to which you go into that work and the classes you can take may not be as deep.
Right.
And so that was sort of a trade-off that I was considering when choosing schools.
Right. Very cool. So you went for the more personalized approach. And do you feel like, I mean, gosh, with that, do you feel like there's a stronger opportunity for you to grow within Princeton, even though there are less, you said it's a smaller department. I don't know if there's less opportunities there in terms of what you can explore, but you feel like the potential is higher there. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, so I think well, I made sure to look specifically at what I would be pursuing. So, given my interest in computational biology, I looked specifically at the faculty working generally in that field at across all of these institutions. And so, Princeton has a institute called the Lewis Sigler Institute for Integrative Genomics. It's a very long title. It's essentially a genomics institute, and so it's a place where a lot of faculty from various departments come together. So biology, chemistry, computer science, mathematics, physics, psychology, neuroscience, everyone really comes together um, and works on research that's essentially, if I had to summarize it, it's quantitative biology. So
Mhm.
really bringing quantitative, so computational and mathematical methods to understanding the life sciences. And so that for me, that was a big standout factor for Princeton, because despite maybe uh, the computer science faculty working in computational biology, maybe there are very few of them, but in this institute, when everyone sort of comes together, you're really getting the top experts in each of their individual fields, putting their mind together and
Wow.
working on this interdisciplinary field. And so if you look at it that way, you really have plenty of options, plenty of people to reach out to and work with. And these are really the top people in each of their respective fields.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about quantitative biology because you've done some research in the past, and
Mhm.
we'll talk about that later. But what specifically are you looking forward to researching at Princeton? Do you have anything in mind, or are you doors wide open, keeping your options there? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I think generally in computational biology, there's various sort of subfields within it. There's examples are like systems biology, structural biology, genomics, proteomics, things like that. And so essentially, each of these subfields are concern themselves with analyzing different types of data in different types of ways. So, for example, if you're dealing with genomics, you're dealing with genetic data. So you can deal with genetic sequencing data. So you might have DNA data, gene expression data, things like that. So you might do statistical analysis on that sequence data or statistical analysis on that gene expression data. And you could also train maybe machine learning and deep learning models to analyze those various types of data. Versus if you look at something like structural biology, you may be dealing with amino acid sequences, so protein sequences. You may be dealing with protein structures and analyzing three-dimensional chemistry in that sense. And so you really can go into a plethora of different subfields within computational biology. Um, a, a field that I've really become interested in throughout high school and hopefully hope to pursue at Princeton is structural biology.
Hmm.
So everything dealing with proteins. Um, I think for me, a big inspiration that really got me into structural biology is a company called DeepMind, which is now a Google company. They came out with a deep learning model called AlphaFold to solve a really big problem in biology that people were not able to solve for quite a long time, which is the protein folding problem. So, how can you take a amino acid sequence, which is essentially a one-dimensional sequence, and determine what the three-dimensional structure of the protein will be once that sequence folds up in three-dimensional space in cells. And so that problem had been worked on for a very long time, and DeepMind was with AlphaFold was really the first project where they were able to properly effectively use artificial intelligence to come up with a system that was very accurate at a molecular level to determine the three-dimensional structures of these proteins just from their amino acid sequence.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so that was I'd say one of the bigger projects that occurred while I was in high school that really got me interested in structural biology. And then looking further into the field, I came across an institute at the University of Washington, and it's their Institute for Protein Design. That might not be the official title, but it's a protein design institute where they're essentially working on uh, designing custom-made proteins to address specific biological problems. So rather than trying to take an existing protein in nature and try and modify it
Hmm.
in order to achieve a certain function, they're designing these proteins from scratch. So
Wow.
they are determining what the like scratch amino acid sequence needs to be in order to fold up to the specific shape in order to achieve the specific function with the protein. And so I think that has tremendous opportunity in terms of therapeutics dealing with various diseases that may not have current effective treatments. And even outside of medicine, if you look at something like climate change, if you want to make a protein that's able to effectively eat up carbon dioxide without having terrible byproducts, you could potentially design from scratch a protein that could achieve that. So I think there's a huge range of opportunity in that field of structural biology and combining it with synthetic biology, where you're making these synthetic proteins.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you know where you want to head with it in particular? Like, do you have any sort of objective in mind with the idea of like, sure, the more the merrier, but like any one that sticks out
Right.
to you that you're like, gosh, I would love to tackle that problem.
Yeah. So it's something that I've actually thought about quite a bit. Um, I think in terms of what's most like what can have the most immediate impact, I think you look at the two biggest causes of death: cardiovascular disease and cancer. I
Mm,
think if you want to work in human health, I think that's somewhere where the structural biology and synthetic biology could have a huge impact. Like I mentioned, climate change, if you want to work in environmental science, there's a lot of options there for how synthetic biology can have an impact. Even in something like space medicine, if you're able to sort of make like protein supplements, like synthetically designed protein supplements for astronauts that could help address a certain problem that comes up when you're in space for long periods of time. That could be another very interesting application.
yeah.
And so I think something I've been thinking about is rather than maybe try to um, focus very specifically on a single problem, if you're able to create a sort of synthetic biology platform where if you're simply able to come to this platform with a specific function in mind, right? So let's say going back to the carbon dioxide protein, right? So it's able to eat up carbon dioxide without any terrible byproducts. If that's your intended function, you should be able to come to this platform and essentially input this intended function, and that should output the platform should essentially output a amino acid sequence that would hypothetically make that uh, protein that more as like a platform approach is something that I think is very interesting. Just so that then if the only sort of limiting factor to what you can achieve with synthetic biology is really identifying the problem and figuring out what specific function you need from the protein.
Definitely, definitely. That would be unbelievable. Wow, wow, wow. So you immersing yourself in this field, hoping to take up as much knowledge as you can, to then employ the resources to, hopefully tackle as many of these as you can and be at a platform way. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow. That's so fascinating. And I'm excited to see where you take this and what you're able to accomplish in these next couple of years. That's tremendous. Well, tell us about your favorite research that you've worked on so far. So I know that you've done a little bit, but give us three main projects that I know that you highlighted, but give us your favorite one, geek out about it, describe it in simple terms. But yeah, talk to us about it.
Um, I'd say so. Like March of 2020, I had just began writing as an EMT on my town's emergency squad. And so obviously that was during peak COVID time. So a lot of our calls were pertaining to COVID cases. And so I was also trying to think of a project at that point to work on during that summer. And so I was like, okay, I could do a COVID related project. I wasn't really sure where to start. And so the first topic that came to my mind was vaccines. And so I started looking into vaccines, doing a lot of research into them, thinking about the vaccine development process. And I came across this initial stage in the vaccine development process. where there's this problem called epitope prediction. And so essentially, when you're designing vaccines, you want to stimulate an immune response in the vaccine recipient's body. And so if you're able to identify regions of, so if I use the COVID example, the COVID spike protein is probably one of the main proteins on the coronavirus. And so those spike proteins, that spike proteins is an example of an antigen, which is essentially a viral protein. And so there are antibodies in your body that are able to bind to the spike protein, identify that it's from a foreign virus, and then essentially deal with the virus, attack it. And so there are specific regions of that antigen, of that spike protein, to which antibodies bind. And so epitope prediction is the problem of determining which regions of the antigen these antibodies are going to bind to. And once you're able to identify the specific regions of that spike protein, for example, you can just include that specific region of that spike protein in your vaccine, whether it be a peptide-based vaccine or an mRNA-based vaccine. And then you're able to guarantee much better that there's going to be an immune response in the recipient's body because you've put the specific region that the antibody is going to bind to inside that vaccine. And so epitope prediction deals with taking the amino acid sequence of that antigen, so let's say the spike protein, and determining in this amino acid sequence which are the immunostimulant regions, or which are the epitopes. And so for that project, I used models that are similar to what your Amazon Alexa or Siri may use, so in natural language processing, because really it's about analyzing a sequence of characters. And it's really just another language. It's the language of biology. You're reading, rather than having sort of traditional English alphabet, you have amino acids, right? And so you're just trying to understand that language and determine which specific regions of the sentence of amino acids are immunostimulant. And so I was able to run it through various natural language processing models in order to train a model that was able to accurately determine from just the protein sequence which regions of the protein would be immunostimulant and therefore could be included in a vaccine for whatever a virus that antigen is from.
Wow. And so were you generalizing this concept, or if I didn't hear it, what were you specifically looking at? What
type
of virus in particular?
Yeah, so the data I was using is there's an open source database called the Immune Epitope Database. And so it's pretty much every single epitope that has been confirmed in vitro, that all of those epitopes and that data is on that database. And so I was using data from various proteins, various proteins, various viruses, so whatever was on that database. And so through that, I was able to create a general prediction model that's able to predict it for any virus and any viral protein.
Wow.
But then I also subsequently applied the model to make predictions on the on some coronavirus proteins. And it was able to find, I don't remember the number exactly, I have to double check. I was able to find, I think, roughly 30 new epitopes that were not previously reported in literature on the coronavirus, various coronavirus antigens.
Oh my goodness, that is unbelievable. That's really that was going to be my next question. Did you find something new? Yeah, you did. That is unbelievable. So did you publish that, and did that somehow get brought up into the, common literature and dichotomy of it?
So I try really hard to make sure all of my research is published. That one specific project, I'm actually trying to implement it as a software package right now on the Immune Epitope database site. So that entire database is managed by the Loyola Institute based out in California. And as part of that, and as part of that website, they have they currently have some prediction tools on there. And I was able to train a system for the specific type of epitope prediction where it was slightly more accurate than the methods that they have on the website currently. Wow. So I'm trying to sort of formalize it into a software package to submit it to them to potentially have it up on that website.
That is so cool. Well, what do you think makes you most proud about doing this? Like, obviously you've done a lot, but what to you stands out the most?
I guess for this project specifically, it was really interesting for me because I sort of, I guess, looked at the world around me and saw what problems were occurring and was really able to do a project based on that. I think just COVID as a topic was really interesting to do research on, even though it was a really terrible situation. But I think generally with computational biology, I think there are a lot of problems just obviously in human health, but even outside of human health, like in environmental science and things like that, where there's a lot of data available now, biological data, from which you can gain insights through computational methods. And so I think that's what I'm really happy that I was able to sort of understand the field a little bit during high school and really get into it. Because now going into college, I think I'll sort of know the right classes to take and the right research opportunities for me where I can really get further insight into the field and identify the problems that are really sort of the big problems in these various subfields in computational biology and see how I can contribute to addressing them.
Wow, 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 wow. And so I want to back up for a sec because the way that you speak on this, you're so proficient. You know a lot about the space, and you're just going into college next year. You said that you really became inspired with this idea of computational biology once you saw AlphaFold come out. But have you always been interested in biology? Like, how did or was it just a quick acceleration from that point? Like, what year in high school was that?
I think for me, I definitely came into high school just generally being interested in tech and computer science. I sort of thought that would be my path throughout high school and going into college. And then I think it was really taking AP Bio my sophomore year that really made a difference for me and really got me interested in biology. Specifically, we had this biotech unit towards the end of the year. It wasn't necessarily computational biology, but it was more just, I'd say, bioengineering related stuff. But we did work with some NCBI software packages during those months, and so that's what really got me. I just was the first time I realized that there's sort of this interface between biology and computer science,
Yeah.
and that's what really got me interested in that field just in general. And then working with my computer science teacher at my school, just generally talking with him, I realized there was a big application of computer science was computer vision applied to medical diagnostics, and that's what got me into my first research project, which was about using deep learning to diagnose a retinal disease called diabetic retinopathy from retinal scans. So really just medical images and determining whether a patient has this disease or not just from that scan. And so that was really my first project. It wasn't necessarily um, classical computational biology or bioinformatics, but it was really at the interface of computer science and biology. And then I was able to sort of look further into the field from there.
That is so cool. Wow. Well, I'm excited to see all that you're able to accomplish in this field. Obviously, you have a lot under your belt already. You're just getting into it, and it's going to be so exciting to see. What do you hope to do after college? Do you know? Are you going to go right into industry? Are you going to start your own thing, continue with research? Do you have that mapped out, or are you still playing it
Yeah.
by ear?
Um, yeah, so I'd say initially my plan was grad school has always been on my radar. I think to really just get the expertise needed to truly make a difference in this field. Um, I think at least a PhD level degree to just get sort of domain expertise. And so that's always been on my radar. I think through being an EMT and doing various clinical related work during high school, I've also gotten really interested in med school.
Mm,
Um, and so I think for me right now, the plan is to go into a combined MD PhD program.
cool.
So where I can do research as part of the PhD and really have it clinically focused and really work with patients through the MD component. But I'm also equally interested, like I mentioned before, about sort of creating this platform-based model for synthetic biology. Really interested in industry, and so I think for me, the sort of path where I can be involved in both clinical work, research, so really clinical work and industry, and sort of having research be this glue that binds everything together. I think being a physician scientist who also is involved in entrepreneurial ventures is really my ideal career, because I think I'd really be able to create the most impact and bring the most value to the field through being in that position. I think having sort of research as my foundation will be helpful because I'll sort of know what the cutting edges or what the next big thing is in biotechnology. And I
Mhm.
think if it's already sort of been scaled where it just needs to be implemented and brought to the end user, I think having that clinical access will be very useful. So I can bring the products directly to the patients where they can really make an impact. Or if there's research that I've done or that there's being done in the field that really needs to be scaled first, I think bringing that to industry would really help to sort of help it scale first, and then you can bring it to patients. So I think having access to both the clinical side of things and also industry will be really helpful.
Definitely. Wow, wow, wow. That's super cool. Well, again, rooting you on every step of the way. I think that's super exciting to see that you have all of these passions. And, I think that you're more than capable of taking them down. So I'm excited for you. We're excited for you. And it's been wonderful hearing about everything that you have to share. So we're going to close it out now with our rapid fire round. And
Okay.
just, as I ask, shoot back with whatever comes to mind first. So, first question, what would you say the most stressful part of being a student is day in and day out?
I'd say finding a balance between staying on track for your long-term ambitions while also excelling in what you're doing in the short run, because I think sometimes if you're focused too much on what you're doing in the short run, you sort of lose track of where you're really trying to go. But if you're always focused on what you're trying to achieve in the long run, you may not do as well in the things in the short run.
No, great point. Great point. All right, next question. What is the most meaningful way for students to help each other?
Um, I'd say this, having conversations, it really helps. I know at least it helped me really define my vision for how I want to bring value to humanity. But I also think it'll really also help you identify the baby steps that you need to take in the short run to get to achieving your goals. So I'd say conversations.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. What would you suggest to any student who is looking to get into Princeton, high schooler?
Mm. I would say consider Princeton's informal motto. It's in the nation's service and the service of humanity. So think about your goals and the work that you do, and think about how it's a form of service. It took me a while to sort of think about it this way, but really, if you're doing anything that can impact people, whether it be in the short run, like directly, or in the long term, it's really a form of service. It doesn't really have to be, going and volunteering at your local senior center or helping out with planting trees. Even something like doing research is a form of service because you're really contributing to humanity's sort of breadth of knowledge and helping humanity advance in that way. If you're doing entrepreneurship, you're sort of serving people by bringing useful products that can help them on a day-to-day basis. And so just think about how your work and ambitions really align with Princeton's focus on service in that way.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. What would you say your biggest hope is to accomplish during your time on Earth?
I'd say maybe try and make disease a less scary thing for humanity. Um, I I don't quite remember exactly where I heard it, but a diagnosis does not need to be a death certificate. I
Mm,
think that's a huge mission for medicine as a whole, and I think if you're able to work towards that disease by disease, um, I personally can't think of anything more rewarding to be working on. I read a book by um, a physician named Siddhartha Mukherjee. It's called The Emperor of All Maladies. It's essentially a biography and historical biography and talking about uh, uh, the past treatments and research, current cutting edge, and what the future is of cancer. And a big point in that book is maybe you don't even want to get to the point of a diagnosis. Maybe the quote unquote cure for cancer that everyone's been looking for is prevention. And so I think sort of working on all stages of sort of a disease cycle. So just preventing it from occurring, and then if it does occur, having treatments where that diagnosis is not a death certificate. I think that's what's really rewarding in medicine as a whole, and computational biology is now contributing to that.
very cool. Very cool. Very cool. And what is the top piece of advice that you would give to someone who is early in their educational journey?
I would say try and like sort of find the joy in whatever you're learning, like regardless of what the subject of the class is. I think not only like it'll help you do way better in the class, but it'll also really help you discern what the true aspects of that field are that made the leaders in that field gravitate towards that field. So if you're like in physics class, for example, try and think about why Einstein really pursued physics, being primarily being a physicist and not like a chef during his lifetime. So what really got him interested in physics? Because I think if you're able to identify that, then you really get extract the most value from that class and potentially even get inspired to pursue it as a career.
Wow, that's great advice, actually. I think, yeah, that's easy to overlook, but it's great advice to actually excel in those classes and appreciate them more. That's wonderful. Well, Mihir, where can people follow you and follow the work that you're doing, keep up with everything that you are doing throughout the years?
You can definitely follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is my first and last name with a V at the end. And you can also just email me at mihirrao princeton.edu if you have any Princeton specific questions or generally want to just get in contact with me.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, all of these great insights. I learned a lot today. I know everyone listening will learn a lot. And again, thank you so, so much.
Thanks a lot.